Well, good evening. Thanks, Mike. What a fantastic kickoff this has been. My goodness. Fantastic worship. Brandon and Stephanie, thanks for being willing to share your story. Walker, Texas Ranger, you nailed it. If this is a sign to come, we are in for a treat. I appreciate that introduction. You mentioned that I was one of the top 100 apologists. I know what you were thinking. I didn't even know there were 100 apologists. I come from Southern California, and not too long ago, I was in line because a new version of the iPhone came out, and I had to have it. Came out on a Friday, I was traveling, so Saturday I got in line in the morning, didn't leave with my phone until the afternoon. I was waiting there about 4 hours. And I was waiting there, the line went out of the store and down about 4 or 5 stores. So I'm standing there trying to be patient, and these 3 high school students come walking up to the guy right next to me. They said, "Hey, we're talking about Jesus. What do you think?" The guy turns around, leans on the railing, and completely ignores these students. So a little bit embarrassed, they start to walk away. I stopped them. I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" They said, "Well, we're talking about Jesus. What do you think?" I said, "I'm not even sure he existed. Do you really believe that Christian stuff?" The guy says, "Well, of course we do. Jesus died on the cross for your sin, and if you believe in him, you can have eternal life." He starts preaching the gospel to me, and I simply said to him, "Why should I believe that story is true?" He says, "Because it's right here in the Bible, which is the Word of God." I said, "How do you know that book is the Word of God? How do you know God spoke through it?" He said, "Well, if you turn to this passage in 2 Timothy, it tells us that all Scripture is inspired." Now, is that a good argument? If you want to know if the Bible's true, can you turn to a passage within the Bible, assuming it's true, to prove that it's true? This is called circular reason. I pointed out to him, he goes, "Yeah, good point." I said, "Do you have any evidence outside of the Bible that tells the things within it really happened and are true?" He says, "Yes, well, don't you know there's these tens of thousands of ancient manuscripts that we have that tell us we have the Bible translated exactly as it was first written down." I said, "Wow, really? Do you know how many words are in the original Greek New Testament?" And at this point, I know exactly what he was thinking. Why did I have to talk to this guy? He said, "No." I said, "Do you know, there's 136,000 words in the original Greek New Testament. If you take the different manuscripts you're talking about and you compare them one with the other, do you know there's between 300,000 and 400,000 differences across those manuscripts? That means for every word in the Bible, there could be 2 or 3 other words. Can you explain that to me?" He said, "What do you think about evolution?" I said, "I'm glad you asked. The evidence is overwhelming. Don't you know we have vestigial structures on our back left over from our ancestors with tails? Don't you know that humans and chimps share 99.5% DNA? Haven't you seen an embryological development?" I'm going on and on, and the guy's just backing up like this, and his eyes are getting big. Finally, I stopped. I said, "I got a confession to make. I'm a Christian." And I wish you could have seen his face. He goes, "Oh." But then a girl standing next to him actually looked genuinely bothered by this. She said, "Was all that true?" I said, "Well, some yes, a lot of it no." I said, "Look, like you, I'm a Christian. But there's a difference between me and you. We both believe in the Bible, but I know why I believe it's true. We both don't buy this Darwinian story, but I know why I don't buy it, and I know why there's good reason to believe we were designed." I said, "Good for you guys on a Saturday in July in Southern California, 10 minutes from the beach, being at the mall, sharing your faith. But if you're going to talk to people about Jesus and about the world being designed, don't you think you should at least have some good reasons why this is true to answer people's questions when they come up?" They agreed. We had a great conversation. They left, went on their way. 10 minutes later, I'm facing this direction. I feel a tap on the shoulder. I turn around, and it's 3 new students who say, "Hey, we're talking about Jesus. What do you think?" Well, I'm just tired of sitting in line, so I start unleashing my role play again until I stop and I look over their shoulders. About as far back at the back of this room, I see the original students who set up their friends to convert the atheists. Now, you might laugh at those high school students, but I'm thinking some of you in here would have done the exact same thing. You know, the question, I love to share the story with students, and I say, you know what, did they love God with their hearts? They say yes. Did they love God with their strength? Absolutely. Did they love God with their minds? Because the question is, what's going to happen to these students when they leave the comfort of their home, they leave their youth group, they leave their Christian school, they go out into the world, or they go to the university in which there's 2 to 3 times as many atheists and agnostics and the public as a whole? What's going to happen to these students? See, we live in an era in which the Bible is under attack, in which the idea of intelligent design is under attack, in which you're a bigoted, homophobic, hateful person if you believe in such a thing as natural marriage. But there's something even more fundamental that's at the root of it. The very nature of truth itself and the importance of truth is being called into question. I teach at Biola University now. I'm a professor in a graduate school program. I still teach one high school class, but before this year, I taught high school students for a decade full time. And I heard about this public school across town who started this free-thinking atheist agnostic club. So I invited a group of them. So 8 of these atheist agnostic students came to my classroom, myself, their leader, 3 of my students, and for 2 hours, these high school students were having a discussion, having a debate about God, about the Bible, about truth. And at the end, the student stood up and said something I've heard over and over again from young people. He stands up, he says, you know, we disagree about all this stuff, but let me provide some perspective. Maybe your beliefs are true for you, and our beliefs are true for us. In other words, maybe you can have your truth and we can have ours. Have you ever heard that? You ever heard this idea, oh, you shouldn't judge? Oh, that may be your truth, but it's not mine. Whenever I talk about religion and morality, I hear this somewhat frequently from young people. Oh, as long as religion works in your life, if that's what you think is right, great. Well, you know what? Jesus seemed to think that truth was pretty important. In fact, Walker, you mentioned one of my favorite passages, John 14:6, where Jesus says, I'm one of the ways, one of the truths, and one of the lives. If you want to come to the Father or the Mother through me, that's great. As long as you live according to whatever feels good, you're okay in my book. Jesus didn't say that, did he? There's at least 100 verses in the New Testament that directly or indirectly say that Jesus is the only way to get to God. You see, Jesus thought that truth itself and what we believe about truth is critical. So I want to start by even asking this question, why does truth even matter? Why is truth even important in the age that we live in? Well, the Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 10, he said, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of truth, so as to be saved. Paul said people perish for eternity because they don't love truth. But guess what? If you're in a relationship and you don't love truth, your relationship will perish. If you don't love truth, your church will perish. If our nation moves further and further away from loving truth, it will perish. Truth is important. Now, the reality is because we're human beings, we all care about truth, but we don't realize it. We've bought all the lies of the culture, and we need someone to bring it out and service it and sometimes just show us, in a sense, what is obvious. So one of my friends was a professor at University of Las Vegas, and he was teaching a class on ethics. And he had a student who challenged him all semester. There's no such thing as truth. You can't say that's true. She's the class relativist. And at the end of the class, the last class period, she stands up and she says to this professor, she says, all semester long you've been talking about truth and how it's so important. She said, why is truth even important? He says, well, would you like the true answer or the false answer? Now that was brilliant. Why? Because her very own question assumed that truth is important. Because she's made in the image of God and we're truth-seeking beings. You see, one reason why truth is so important is because truth has consequences. Truth has consequences. My uncle is a pastor up in Massachusetts, and we were talking about this not too long ago, and he told me a story of a man in his congregation who was deaf. He could not hear. And he was convinced that it was true, that a train was coming at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the woods out behind where they lived. So at 11 in the morning, he went walking on the train tracks. A train was coming behind him. He did not see it. He could not hear it. It could not stop in time, and it hit him, and it killed him, and it cost him his life because he was mistaken about something being true. You might think, oh, that's so dramatic. Look, I tell my students, I say, the test is on Monday. And I repeat it 5 times for the freshmen. The test is on Monday. If they heard Tuesday and don't study, consequences. You get the wrong directions to get here, and you don't have truth, consequences. That's why Hosea the minor prophet said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Why else is truth important? I'm going to ask everyone here to close your eyes. Close your eyes. Right where you're at, close your eyes. And without hitting the person next to you, point the direction you think is north. Keep your eyes closed. You have to point. You're going on a journey. You've got to choose. Just pick whether you know or not. Keep your eyes closed. Point your hands. Everybody point out. Keep your hands pointed and open up your eyes and look around. I'm pretty sure if I followed your advice, I could be going any single direction around here thinking that I'm going north. Now, I won't point at you, but I'll tell you this. North is not straight up. Every single time someone just goes like this. Now, if you're going on a journey and you want to head up to Canada and you're confused and you have it backwards, you're going to end up in another country very different than Canada. Right? So truth has consequences, but what might you have that'll help you know what is truth? A compass, right? Or the app on your cell phone. You see, truth is a compass for life. When we know what is true, we know how we should live. That's why truth is so powerful. That's why truth matters so much. You see, I'm guessing some of you are probably really good in technology here, and some of you have probably been resentful and angry since the moment our world started turning digital. Well, I'm somewhere in the middle. And not too long ago, I needed help with my internet access, so I called up those operators from India, really nice folks. They talk like this, and they answer your questions. And the guy answered my question. I was about to hang up. I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask this guy a question. This guy's job is to answer questions about how a computer works all day. You got to think he gets some pretty stupid questions. Right? I mean, maybe if some of you are teachers in here, you tell your students there's no such thing as stupid questions. That's a lie. And we all know it, right? So I'm about to hang up. I said, I'm curious. Can you tell me just the craziest questions you've ever got about how to work a computer? He said, sure, I'll give you a couple real fast, and I got to go. He said, I had a lady call up, and she was really frustrated. She was confused. She was upset. I calmed her down, and I said, well, what's the matter, ma'am? She said, my foot pedal doesn't work. What did she think? Yeah, I heard someone say it. She thought the mouse was a foot pedal, like when you sew. She put it under the table and was like clicking it with her foot. Then he said, I had another guy call up, same thing, frustrated, upset, confused. And he says, well, what's the matter, sir? And he says, God, I want to exchange my computer and get a new one because my cup holder's not big enough to fit my favorite mug. Anyone? Yes, CD-ROM or DVD-ROM drive. It looks like a cup holder if you didn't know any different. Well, this last one actually happened to someone close to me. I cannot say who it is because I would never embarrass the woman who birthed me. Well, my mom a few years ago, she's the kind of person, she's come a long ways. But for a while, she follows instructions to the T. You know what I mean? Like, tell me exactly what to do. And she got a new computer and decided to set up her own email account. Big mistake. So she's following the instructions, and one of the first instructions that comes up says, close all the windows. My mom got up from her chair, walked around the house, and closed all the windows in the house. Now you're chuckling because you get the joke, right? You actually understand something about a computer. You know that the mouse was not designed to be used as a foot pedal. You know the CD-ROM drive is not meant to hold a mug. And when the computer screen says close all the windows, it's not talking about the windows in your house. You see, there is a design and a purpose and a truth about a computer. And when we're confused about its purpose and its truth, we get frustrated, we get upset, we get angry, and we get embarrassed, and we end up asking stupid questions. But when we know the truth of a computer, what happens? We can use it according to its design and experience everything it's meant to help us do. You see why truth is so powerful? Because truth actually sets us free. Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Satan is a father of lies. I think the biggest lie in our generation I deal with young people is I was talking to, just 3 days ago, talking to a skeptical friend of mine, and I said, would you describe your life as being free? He says, yes, I can do anything I want to do. I said, that's not freedom. I said, that leads to slavery. True freedom is having the capacity to do what is right. That's what true freedom is. Friends, we live in a world that says you can have your truth and I can have mine, but the reality is the further we move away from God's truth for relationships, for the church, for nations, for marriage, the more people are going to get hurt. We need to stand up for truth because truth is what sets us free. So truth has consequences. Second, truth is what sets us free. But third, believing is not enough. We live in a world that says as long as you believe something, it's true for you. My dad was speaking at an event about this size, a few hundred people. And he went out in the audience and he started challenging students to answer the question of how they knew the Bible is true. Leadership event, top students in the country. So my dad goes up to the student and he said, do you believe the Bible's true? He says, yes. He says, do you think it's scientifically, historically accurate in everything it teaches that we properly interpret? He says, yes. My dad looks at him and asks a question. I think it's fair. He said, why? And he looks at my dad. He goes, gosh, I don't know. So my dad goes around the room. Not a single student could give an intelligent answer why they thought the Bible is true. So then afterwards, my dad goes to the back. The student comes running up and he says to my dad, he goes, hey, I know why the Bible's true. My dad thought, why is the Bible true? He said, the Bible is true because I believe it. My dad said, wait a minute. How can something be true because you believe it? What about the Quran? If a Muslim believes the Quran is true, does that make it true? He said, if a Muslim really believes it, then it's true for him. My dad looked at him and said something I think was profound. He said, here's the difference between me and you. You think something is true because you believe it. I believe something because I think it is true. Do you see the difference? Nothing is true just because we believe it. But hopefully we believe things that are true. Right? I mean, do you know how many times I believed I was 6'9" and in the NBA? I'm only 6'8" on this stage. Truth and reality is disgustingly indifferent to what we believe about it. And this generation of young people has bought the lie. As long as I'm sincere, as long as I believe it, it's true for me. Now let's stop for a second and actually define what truth is. I'm amazed. I've spoken to thousands of students and been in church, and I'll ask people, can you tell me what truth is? And it's the exception that I get a thoughtful definition of what truth actually is. I won't go around and ask you this. Maybe you're different. But how do you define what truth is? Well, philosophers have a simple definition. It's called the correspondence theory of truth. In other words, a statement is true if it matches up with reality. So if you have a belief or an idea in your mind, and it actually matches up with the way the world is, then your belief is what? It's true. If it doesn't, your belief is false. So if I say I drove here from Southern California where I live and it only took me 12 hours because I drove in my new red Lamborghini. And you go walking outside and you see that, my statement just might be what? Might be true. Now, if you walk outside and you see this, my statement would be what? It'd be false. Why? Because I described it as red, and in reality, it's yellow. Now, if you walk outside and see this, which is what I really drive, I don't know why you're laughing. I had a junior high kid go, you drive a Ford. I said, what do you drive? My statement would be really false, right? You see, truth is when we have an idea about the world and when it matches up with the way the world actually is. So I have a son who's 9, and I kind of try to teach him these kinds of things. And I like superheroes. So I'll take a word on the side, the names for superheroes, put a picture of them on the right. And if you accurately correspond from, say, the Wolverine to Wolverine, or Batman picture to Batman, it corresponds, or Spider-Man to Spider-Man, you have truth. So truth is when a belief matches up with reality. Is that smoke coming? No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry. Now, what'd you do when I said that for a second? Some of you turned and looked back there to see if smoke was coming up from the door in the back. Now, since there was no smoke coming up from the back, my statement was what? It was false. If there actually was smoke coming up from the back and Mike had snuck out the side and he just needed a cigar, we don't judge you. I'm just playing. Then my statement would have been what? It would have been true. You see, isn't this how we operate in life? We have beliefs, we make statements, and then we go check to see if the world is the way we describe it to be. If it is, our belief is true. If not, it's false. Now, you're probably sitting here going, I didn't know the title corresponds theory of truth, but that's how I use truth, and you're absolutely right. As human beings, this is how we use truth. But here's the catch. When the topic shifts to matters of religion, or more specifically, matters of ethics or morality, people will change what they mean by truth. So if I was going to ask you what the best flavor of ice cream is here in Albuquerque, what would you say? Vanilla? I heard vanilla and chocolate. You guys are really wild here in Albuquerque. Man, hold me back. Someone said sherbet. Sorry, not an ice cream. What? Rocky Road? Okay. What else? Birthday cake. I heard Superman. Okay, look, I'm not hearing the right answer, so let me help you out. I'll just answer it for you. The correct answer is the best flavor of ice cream is Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Now, by show of hands, who says that statement is true? Let me see your hands. Who says that statement is false? Let me see your hands. Okay, this is really strange. I hope you appreciate the dilemma we find ourselves in. So you're telling me the statement, chocolate peanut butter is the best, can be true for you, but not true for you? How can the same statement be true and false at the same time? Because we're talking about something we call subjective. Right? See, subjective claims are personal, they're private, and they can change. It's a matter of preference, it's a matter of feeling. In fact, the key word in subjective is subject. The very fact that a subject believes something makes it true for him or for her. Right? It's a subjective preference claim about ice cream. Now, what if I said this? What if I said chocolate peanut butter ice cream controls diabetes? Amen. I knew there were some Southern Baptists here. Now, some of you are chuckling because this is a very different statement, isn't it? Is this a preference statement? Is this something that can be true for you and not true for you? No longer am I talking about something internal to the mind of the subject. Now I'm talking about the way the world really is, and if we get it wrong, there's consequences. See, this is a claim we call objective. You see, objective claims are truths of the external world that we discover. They can't change, and they're the way the world is in itself. So here's a way to compare it. If I had, say, a bowl of ice cream in front of me, and I said, that ice cream is delicious, is that really a claim about the ice cream, or is a subjective claim about me? It's really about me. If I say that ice cream weighs 5 grams, now is that about me or the ice cream? That's about the object or the ice cream. Okay, so when you think of subjective claims, I want you to think of ice cream. When you think of objective claims, I want you to think of insulin, because insulin actually helps control diabetes. Now, I'm going to ask you to participate here with me for a second, or more than a second, and in a second, not yet, I'm going to throw some different statements up on the screen. And I want you to shout out, as loud as you want to, one of two things. If you think the statement is a subjective claim, I want you to shout out ice cream. If you think it's an objective claim, I want you to shout out insulin. Now, very important, I'm not asking if these statements are true or false. I'm simply asking what kind of statement are they? Okay? Let's give it a shot. First one. Coke tastes better than Pepsi. Ice cream. Even if you didn't like Coke or Pepsi, you know that's a preference statement. Okay? Diet Cola has fewer calories than regular Coke. Okay, good. That's insulin. Now that's actually about the Coke itself and certain qualities the Coke has. All right, good. Next. George Washington was the first president of the United States. Okay, I heard insulin unanimously, but notice something. This is a matter of what discipline we learn in school. This is history. So this is something from the past, but there's still a real objective answer about who in fact was the first president of the United States. So you're telling me that historical claims are like insulin that are either true or false. Okay, let's try this one. Hawaii is the most beautiful vacation spot on earth. Ice cream, okay, good. We all know it's Southern California. All right, how about this one? Ice cream, good. Action movies are more enjoyable than romances. Okay, ice cream, good. I heard a couple of people say insulin, obviously the unmarried folks in the group. That's a preference claim, right? A matter of what you enjoy and what you get pleasure out of. Fine, that's an insulin claim. How about this one? Sean McDowell can bench press 300 pounds. Who says ice cream? Let me see your hands. Who says insulin? Who says, I'm not voting on this. This is really odd. Okay, all right. Now, you got to listen very, very carefully. Remember, I'm not asking if this is true or false. I'm simply asking, what kind of claim is this? Is this a preference claim that can be true for you or false for you? Or is there actually an objective truth about that issue? You see where this is going? Now, you don't know how many pounds I can bench press, and to be honest with you, I don't know. I honestly don't. But to answer whether this is ice cream or insulin, it doesn't matter, because there is a truth about it that depends upon the way the world actually works. So you don't know the answer to it, but you know there is a true answer, and it's an insulin issue. So if I said there's 50 quadrillion zillion atoms in the universe, we don't know that. We'll probably never know that until we get to heaven. But there's a right answer about that, isn't there? So you can have objective claims about an issue for which we actually don't know the answer. How about this? Earth is the center of the solar system. Okay, insulin. Now, is this a historical claim? What kind of claim is this? This is scientific, but is it true or false? It's false. So you can have a false objective claim, right? A false insulin claim. So far, you all have told me, I want you to answer this one in a minute when we throw it up, right away, your gut instinct. You've told me that historical issues are matters of insulin. You've told me scientific issues are a matter of insulin. How about this one? Abortion is wrong. Okay, who says ice cream? Let me see your hands. Who says insulin? Who says, it's been a long night and you're really making me think? I don't know. Okay, all right. When I do this with students, between 50 and sometimes 90% will shout out ice cream. Now, this is not a historical question. This is not a scientific question, although science may help us answer it. This is a question of morality. Are moral issues preferences like ice cream, or are there actually truths when it comes to moral issues like insulin? Now, follow with me for a second. If all moral issues were like ice cream, could you ever judge anyone for doing anything wrong? You couldn't. If morality was like ice cream, who are you to judge Putin for taking his 6,000 soldiers in and just taking over the Ukraine? Who are you to judge if it's like ice cream? Well, he wants to stay in Russia, that's chocolate. Well, he wants to go to Ukraine and steal it, that's like vanilla. Who are you to judge if morality is like ice cream? Bashar Assad, who's responsible for decimating his country and the death of over 100,000 people. If morality is like ice cream, that's a matter of preference. But I think all of us just know certain things are right and certain things are wrong, don't we? In fact, I was having a discussion not too long ago with a guy I met who became a friend, about the issue of abortion. And he turns to me, he says, if you don't like abortion, then don't have one. I said, well, sorry to point out the obvious, but I can't. But you understand what he's thinking? If you don't like abortion, don't have one. If you don't like chicken, get the fish. If you don't like chocolate, get vanilla. As if the entire question of abortion is a matter of preference. So I turned to him, I said, are you against slavery? He said, yes. I said, then if you don't like slavery, don't own a slave. Now, are we against slavery because we don't like it? We don't prefer it? Why are we against slavery? Because we think it's objectively wrong to mistreat and enslave a human being based upon a secondary characteristic such as skin color. Amen. It's exactly right. You see, even when people tell me they don't believe in morality, they think things are relative, I never believe them. Because Romans 2 says that people who don't have the law still know it because of their consciences. It's written on the human heart. So even my atheist friends who say they don't believe in God, I know they're still made in the very image of the God that they deny. Besides, you want to know the best way what someone believes about morality? It's not by what they say, but what? It's actually not by what they do. Sorry, tricked you. It's not by what they say, not by what they do, but by how they want to be treated. Everybody wants to be treated as if justice, fairness, mercy, compassion are objective features of the universe. See, people will break a promise to you, but the moment you break a promise to them, they'll cry foul. I tell my students, I'll say, if someone tells you there's no such thing as objective morality, cut in front of them in line. What are they going to say? I got here first. What do you mean you got here first? As if there's this standard of morality and fairness that both of us are bound to follow? Right? I mean, not too long ago, my students set up, my high school students, we had a three-way debate. Three of my students with three atheist students about intelligent design, the historical Jesus, and morality. One of their students got there and he says, morality is like ice cream. It's preference. There's no right and wrong. It's all what you think, and nobody can judge anybody else. Sits down. For the closing statement, he stands up. I was moderating the debate. He stands up, and instead of summarizing the debate as you're supposed to, he uses the opportunity of being in a church with 200 or 300 people in the audience to rail Christians for being intolerant, bigoted, hateful, and homophobic. No, I couldn't say anything, but I was a moderator. But do you notice something odd about this? Morality is subjective. It's a matter of opinion. But you bigoted, homophobic, hateful Christians have violated every objective moral principle in the universe. Right? Because people are made in the image of God and they know right and wrong. So the question of abortion, look, here's the question of abortion. This is from a friend of mine, Scott Klusendorf. He taught me this. It really boils down to one question. I want you to imagine you're doing dishes. Okay, and for some of you, this takes a lot of imagination. So you're doing dishes and you have maybe a 5-year-old, a kid or grandkid come walk in, you can't see. And they say, Mommy, Papa, can I kill this? Now before you answer, what question are you going to ask? What is it? If you turn around and they say, it's a cockroach, you're going to say, yes. If you turn around and they show you a cat, you're going to say, hurry up. If you turn around and it's a bunny, you say, okay, that's kind of messed up. Why do you want to hurt a cute bunny? If you turn around and they're holding a 2-year-old kid that they grabbed from a carriage down the street, you're going to say, whoa, time out. And you're only 5, but you need counseling to think you would treat a human being that way. See, the moral principle is how we treat something depends upon what it is. If the unborn is just a matter of tissue, then no justification is necessary for abortion. If the unborn is a valuable human person, then what justification is adequate? Moral issues, we know it, are matters of insulin. Besides, if morality was like ice cream, that would undermine the entire gospel, wouldn't it? What would sin be if morality is like ice cream? Why did Jesus die? It makes no sense. So let me ask you 3 more. Ice cream or insulin? Are you ready? Here we go. Jesus was a carpenter. Insulin. Next one. Jesus died on the cross in AD 30. Insulin. Some say it was 29, some say it was 31 or 33, but that's still an insulin statement. Jesus rose from the grave, proving he is God. Okay, insulin. Most everybody got that. No one's going to contest that Jesus being a carpenter is an insulin statement. No one's going to contest the idea of Jesus dying on the cross being an insulin kind of statement. But as soon as you say Jesus has risen from the grave, proving he is God, then in the minds of so many people, oh, Jesus has risen for you, Krishna has risen for me. Buddha has risen for me. Mohammed or Joseph Smith or any other religious figure has risen for me. Now, I hope we realize that nobody dies and spends eternity in hell just for not believing in Jesus. We're on the same page with that, right? Nobody dies and spends eternity in hell merely for not believing in Jesus. People spend eternity separated from their Creator because of a rebellion against their Creator, because of a moral virus we call sin. And to say that Buddha or Krishna or Mohammed or Joseph Smith or any other religious figure can pay the debt for my sin is like saying chocolate peanut butter ice cream controls diabetes. It doesn't work in the objective, real world. See, one of the things that sets Christianity apart is you can believe in it, you can reject it. But it's not the kind of system that can be true for you, but not true for you. You see, Jesus didn't tell these pithy stories to help us just become better people. He did objective things in history we can actually examine with our minds and with history and with science and with philosophy and psychology. In fact, the claims of Christianity are so objective that if you were there with Jesus on the cross, you could have reached out and touched the cross, and if you touched it like this, you might have got a splinter on your hand. You could have reached out and felt the trickle of warm blood coming down from the body of Jesus, and if you took it to a lab, it would have had a specific blood type. If you're there with Thomas when Thomas says, I will not believe unless I can touch the spear wounds and the nail wounds with my own hands, you could have reached in with your hand and felt the wounds in the physical body of Jesus. If you're there with the women in the empty tomb, you could have seen a stone rolled away, smelled the scent of a musty, empty tomb, and seen the linen cloth of Jesus lying there in an empty tomb. Friends, you can believe in Jesus, you can reject Jesus, but Christianity is not the kind of system that can be true for you, but not true for you. Jesus did not say, I am one of the ways, one of the truths, one of the ways, possible ways, and if you're good, you're okay in my book. He claimed to be the only way of salvation, and that our eternal destinies rest upon him. There is more pressure right now, and I think more pressure is coming to compromise that message. And we're going to see the wheat separated from the chaff. And you know it here in New Mexico because of issues and rulings that have come down recently for people that hold a biblical worldview. And one thing that I've gotten pushed back on is people say, gosh, you think you know the truth? How arrogant. How arrogant that is to think you know the truth. You know what that person's just done? They've just shifted from talking about the issue to insulting you as a person. I'll often stop and I'll say, you know what? I might be arrogant, I might be humble, but what on earth does that have to do with the point that I just made? Is this your normal MO, to attack somebody and insult them personally when you disagree? And oftentimes people don't even see it because it's this gut, reaction of, oh, it's arrogant to think you have the truth. We can be humble and wrong. We can be humble and right. You can be arrogant and be wrong. You can be arrogant and be right. In fact, I got to read this quick story for you. I wrote this little book called Ethics for Students to walk them through truth and these kind of thorny ethical issues like same-sex marriage, like abortion, like should Christians be involved in war, knowing God's will to help young people wrestle with this. And I found this story I had to include from a friend of mine. Here it is. It starts off, the teacher instructs her class. Welcome, students. This is the first day of class, so I want to lay down some ground rules. First, since no one has the truth about morality, you should be open-minded to the opinions of your fellow students. The teacher recognized the hand of Elizabeth, who asks, if nobody has the truth, isn't that a good reason for me not to listen to my fellow students? After all, if nobody has the truth, why should I waste my time listening to people and their opinions? What's the point? Only if someone has the truth, it makes sense to listen. Don't you agree, Professor? No, not at all. I don't. Are you claiming to know the truth? Isn't that a bit arrogant and dogmatic? Well, this student says, not at all. Rather, I think it's dogmatic as well as arrogant to assert that no single person on earth knows the truth. After all, have you met every person in the world and quizzed them exhaustively? If not, how can you make such a claim? Also, I believe it's the opposite of arrogance to say I will alter my opinions to fit the truth wherever and whenever I find it. If I happen to think I have good reason to believe I know the truth and would like to share it with you, why wouldn't you listen to me? Why would you automatically discredit my opinion before it is even uttered? I thought we were supposed to listen to everyone's opinion. And then a kid in the back shouted out, ain't that the truth? Friends, there is such a thing as truth, and we know it. One thing I found is the more loving and compassionate and thoughtful and caring Christians are, it's a lot harder for an unbelieving world to look us in the eyes and say that you're arrogant and bigoted. When we love like Jesus loved, we win the ear of many in our unbelieving world. But mark my words, the greatest person who loved in the history of the world was obviously Jesus Christ, and they crucified him. You think they'll do any different to you? Every single one of us in this room, and in particular young people, whether it's tomorrow or it takes a little longer, are going to have to start making decisions that might cost us something. A job, a relationship, a reputation, if we're going to stand on the side of truth. And it's easy and it's comfortable to compromise. We need to love like Jesus loved, but we need to stand on truth. And I will not compromise, no matter what it costs me. Jesus didn't say he's one truth. He claimed to be the truth. And it's only when we know Jesus and live in the universe knowingly that Jesus created that we experience freedom. And friends, it's Christians who have this solution for the world. The question is, are we going to be bold enough and kind enough and thoughtful enough to share this truth to our neighbors? And like Walker, Texas Ranger said, get out of our comfort zones and just step out and do it. Because a hurting world is waiting for you and I. Amen? Hey, I'll tell you this. I'll close because I work with students and I've only got so many sessions. But if you work with young people, you want to understand the minds of young people, the book Ethics is back there. Being bold in a whatever world. And the paradigm is Daniel, who said, I determined in my heart not to defile myself. We got to train up young people to be ready before these challenges come. Then the obvious question is, all right, if there's such a thing as truth, how do we know what is true? Well, I put together with a buddy of mine, we wrote a book called Is God Just a Human Invention? And we took the 17 top challenges people raise that I've heard today from people all over, and I see all over the internet, about challenging that God is good, about hell, about the problem of evil, about is Christianity sexually oppressive? I mean, these are serious questions that young people are dealing with. And we answered them forcefully with truth, but in a compassionate, gracious way. And the last one I wrote for students in particular is called the Apologetic Study Bible for Students. We got the top 120 questions that young people are wrestling with. Questions about God, questions about science. It's a normal Bible, but it's filled with all these things to help students be equipped for these challenges, including my favorite question. If God made everything, then why is it wrong to smoke pot? That's a real question young people are dealing with. If you don't help them see that Jesus applies to that question, they're going to compartmentalize their faith. And eventually, at some point, if they don't make those connections, they're going to walk away. I can't wait for my other sessions. I can't wait for the pie. I'm going to sneak to my table. I'd love to shake your hand, answer some questions. Mike, come up and wrap us up, bud. Thank you.